Happy Friday, everybody. Professor Toybox here, along with Dash, and we're back in my Hawaiian Grand Prix toy box for the final time today as we wrap up this race course and put the finishing touches on it. And I'm going to begin here where we left off last time, right at the top of the hill where we're lowering the mines. And as we come around the corner over here, one of the things I notice as I play through this course is that sometimes when I slide around this corner, because of my poor driving skills, I sometimes overshoot this curve and fall into the field over there. And so one of the things I want to do, just for myself, and this could be useful for some of you as well, is that I'm going to set up a barrier block here, a scalable barrier block, and you find this inside the platforming toys drawer. And I'm going to drop it down there, and we're going to stretch this out in this direction, and we'll take it out this far. That should be far enough. And we'll go ahead and set the properties on this to turn the collision effect off. So it's invisible, the player won't even know it's there. And if you have younger players or you just suck at driving like I do, that can be really helpful as you're trying to turn this corner and make it down this slope. Just have something to bounce off of. Because if you do slide off of this and into the field, trying to get back on the road through these trees can be a bit of a problem. And if you get too far away from the road, it'll respawn you at some point, and you don't know where that is. So that just helps a lot. Okay, following the course of the road, we come next to the volcano. And the first thing I want to do here is set up a couple of barriers across this track here. And I've already picked out the barrier that I want to use. You'll find this inside the decorations drawer. It's the road closed barrier. And I believe this is from the Cars set. Let me just double check. Yep. So if you have the Cars playset, you should have this. And that's the piece that I want to use. And I want it set up so that when I come through here and destroy those things, and then I reset the racetrack for the next race, I want to put those back. And so we're going to use a replayer to put this down. And we're going to need two controls for this, a replayer and a time delayer. So on the replayer, I'll set the properties to take the playback interval to 0. And again, I've already placed these out of the Creativity Toys drawer to save a little bit of time. That's all I've done with them. And on the time delayer, we'll set the properties on this to be 5 seconds. 3 is probably enough. 5 is probably safer. And then let's go ahead and come out of the editor. And I will step on the replayer to get my menu in the lower right corner. On my Wii U, which is what I play on, I press B to record. Then I got to step off to get back into the editor. And I want to set up 2 of these right across the road, right in front of the dirt track. And as you notice, I can't place them too close to that. So I got to place them out a little ways away from them. A little ways away from that track. And we're going to put down 2 of them like that. And then I'll exit out of the editor and we'll step back on the replayer. I press B again to stop recording, and I will leave it at that. Okay, so there are our barriers. And now that I have those down, I can go ahead and take out my temporary one. And again, I just put that down just so I wouldn't have to scroll through that long decorations drawer to find it. Alright, so now that those barriers have been set down with a replayer, we can go ahead and hook those up to our reset button. And to make this easy, let's go ahead and come back over here to that reset button, and we'll move that over to the beach, which is where I'm ultimately going to need this anyway. So I'm going to pick this button up, and we're going to move it over to the beach. This is the start of the race course, and it's the place where we're going to finish the race. So it makes sense to have this over here where it's easy to access. Unfortunately, it takes a little while to get there. But we'll tuck it down here in this little corner right there like that. All right, and on this button, we'll go ahead and do a new logic connection when pressed. First thing we'll do is come up to the replayer. And we'll clear it. And then because we can't hook a connection directly up to that, again, that's why we have the time delayer there. So on the button, a new logic connection when pressed. Come over to the time delayer and start the delay. Oh yeah, I gotta upgrade Dash's skills. On the time delayer, a new logic connection when the delay is complete. We'll come over to the replayer and do a playback. And this way, by putting a 5-second delay in there, again 3 was probably sufficient, that gives the replayer time to clear it before we turn around and do a playback on it. Because you don't want to do those too quickly, you can corrupt the replayer. And as another note on this, the other thing with the replayer, since it's hooked up to this button, you want to make sure when you play that you only press the button after you've done a race. And you only press it one time, so you don't want to repeatedly press it because that can also corrupt those replayers. All right, and that takes care of the barrier coming into the lava. The next thing we need to do are to hook up the lava blocks to make the lava eruptions start after the first lap. And to do that, I've placed a trigger area over here near the end of the race on the final turn before we get to the race start over there. And so to get to this point, the player will have had to have raced through most of the course. And so they've gone through the lava bed with the lava just kind of there. And now when they come to this point, I want to start the eruptions. So I've got a trigger area that I've stretched across the course here. Across the track. And so on this trigger area, we'll do a new logic connection when entered by any. So this will start when a player comes through here or an AI car. And we're going to come over to the volcano. And I've got 3 blocks under here. This is the first one. These are the erupting lava blocks. And we're going to start. And on each of these blocks, we should go ahead and set the properties. And we want it set just like it is. So smoke is on, dangerous eruption is on, random timing is on. And this doesn't matter because this flag is on. And I've already done that ahead of time on all of these, I believe. So I've got my second one is over here. We'll just double check these. On. Yep. And the third one is right here. So we want to turn all 3 of those blocks on when something passes through this trigger area. So a new logic connection when entered by any. Come over to that second lava block. And that was this one over here. And we're going to start that one. And then we'll do this also for the third one. And again, I could have just done one of these and had you do the rest of them yourself offline, but it's helpful to see exactly what I'm doing for some of you newer builders. And I want this to be kind of an entry-level series, because race courses are one of the easiest things you can build. There, now we've started all three of the erupting blocks. Now I only want to do this one time, and so I have a logic gate that I've placed up here on top of the hill out of sight. And so on the trigger area, we're also going to do a new logic connection when entered by any. We'll come up to our logic gate and input into the gate. And on the logic gate, a new logic connection on output. We'll turn around and come back to the trigger area and deactivate it. So only the first car to pass through here will turn those erupting blocks on. And this saves a little bit of processing power, because then with this trigger area deactivated, the system's CPU isn't sitting here checking this thing every time on every cycle. All right, so with that deactivated and with the eruptions on, when the race is over, we need to put this back into its starting condition. And so on this reset button, we'll do a new logic connection when pressed. We're going to come up to each of the erupting blocks. And we're going to stop them from erupting. New logic connection when pressed. And I'm sure by now you get the idea, but again, I'm going to go ahead and hook up all of these. So for you more experienced builders that kind of know what to expect for the next minute or so, as I'm doing this, you can fast forward a little bit to the next section. But for those of you who want to see everything happening step by step, I want to make sure I don't skip anything here. So when pressed on that button, we'll go ahead and stop the last erupting block. And again, it doesn't quite matter where you place these. You can put them anywhere you want along this road. That's where I chose to place mine. And the last thing we need this reset button to do is to reactivate that trigger area. So we will do a new logic connection when pressed. Come over here and activate the trigger area. And that's everything for the Volcano. Okay. Now as we continue around the track and we go down the hill and around the corner, we come to the temple. And there's different obstacles on either side of this depending on which side you take. And so come out of Spark mode back into the editor, and we're going to come down to the platforming toys and go to the right. And on the right hand path as you're coming through here, I have some rock hammer pendulums. And these fit just inside here. And let me find my shot that tells me exactly where I want to place this. And that's actually just about right. Or just a little bit more. And we want to center this on the road. So just like that. And I'm lining it up, as you can see, with the edge of that block. And if you're a little bit off, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't have to be precise. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and place another one down here, just off the edge of that block there. Okay. Now the next obstacle is this spinner. That's on the other side of the walkway here, on the other path. And I am going to place this. Let's see, where did I want to put this? I'm looking at these little sections that are coming out from the wall back there. I've got 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to place this about right here with the post right up next to the edge of the road. And the idea here is I don't really want to place it right in the middle and completely block the player, especially the AI cars, which can happen. It's sufficient enough to put it off to the side, and that kind of forces the player to miss that bar to have to hug the right-hand side of this track, which is dangerously near the drop-off. And I think that's dangerous enough right there. And then the other obstacle on this side of the track is the tar trap. And I'm going to line this up with the edge of the block over here. We're going to put a row of these across the track. I'm going to go ahead and put it 2 rows deep, like that. So the player will have to jump over that in order to avoid getting slowed down. And that's it for the temple. It's just a matter of placing a few obstacles in here. They're not difficult to avoid, but it's something interesting to dodge. The next obstacle is over here, and I've already placed the toys that I need out of the editor to save a little time. This is out of the racetrack pieces. So is the Ring of Fire, and I've placed this half a block off the edge of the ramp. These are 2 terrain cubes out of the terrain drawer, and again, I've styled these like I did the one last time to use Sights of San Francisco. And I've got the rocket engine from the Marvel Battleground set kind of hiding in between them. And I've got 2 party cannons over here off to the side of the road, kind of out of the way, and they're right on the edge of that piece of racetrack. And they're not, you'll notice they're not right on the edge of the road, so there's a little bit of leeway for the player and the AI cars to avoid them. And so the idea here, again, if you saw the playthrough video, is that the player has the choice of trying to jump through here and through the Ring of Fire. And if they do, I want to set off the rocket engine. That's kind of a trap that you're laying for the players who might be right on your tail. And so on the fire ring, we're going to do a new logic connection on go through. And we're going to come over to the rocket engine, and we'll fire the rocket engine. And the one toy that I'm missing that I just thought of is the sound generator. So out of the gameplay toys drawer, we do need this sound effects generator. And to hide this, let's just go ahead and drop it up here on top of the building for right now. And I'm going to go ahead and set the properties on this to turn off the 3D sound. Alright, so activating the rocket engine is just a visual effect and also a deadly one if you pass through it, but there's no sound. So that's why we need the sound generator. So when the player goes through the Ring of Fire, we want to come up to the sound generator, if I can select it. And it's under the general category. And if we scroll down, we're looking for the rocket blast-off sound. That one. So that'll play the audio effect that goes with that. And then because the player isn't going to be able to see that going off, I've got a couple of party cannons down there that'll give them some visual feedback when they go through the Ring of Fire successfully. So we'll come over to our party cannons and we'll do a grand finale, which will give them some fireworks and confetti. And I'm going to do that for each of these. Just like that. And there we go. So there's our booby trap. All right, the last thing we need are just some very simple things. We're going to put down a boost pad and some... the boost pad is here under the racetrack pieces, and some weapon generators, and those are under the Creativitoys drawer. And so I'm going to line this one up in the middle of the track, lined up with that block over there, that terrain cube. We're going to put these 3 wide, and this gives the player, when they're coming up here, a choice. Do they want to try to take the ramp and maybe set off that rocket engine, or do they want to go for the weapon generators? And again, on each of these, to activate them, you got to come under the properties and turn on the auto spawn pickups. And you need to do that for every one of these. Because if you don't turn that property on, these toys will do nothing. All right, and we're also going to place some over here near the start of the racetrack. And let me just grab my screenshot here. I'm going to line these up with the edge of this building right over here. And once again, we'll put them 3 across. And we need to activate each of these. And it's up to you whether you want to place these here or not. I chose to do that just to kind of make it a little bit interesting. The normal tendency when you start a race is it tells you to rev your engine and go. Well, if you do that and you get out ahead of the other cars and everybody's picking up weapons, as you're trying to navigate this turn, you're going to probably get shot up. So it's one of those things where it's kind of a good idea to hang back and not rev your engine, which I kind of thought was a unique dynamic. And then as we come around this corner, we have kind of a long stretch. So it's good to have the boost pad here. So we'll come back to the racetrack toys. We want to make sure we orient the arrows in the right direction. And I'm only going to put 1 across here. And we're going to line it up right with the edge of this terrain scene. So just like that. And then we're going to place some more weapon generators a little further down the track. So as we come around the corner and up the hill, the bridge explodes. And then as we get past this little canyon here, we're going to place some weapon generators over here. And I want to do that right past the seam on this track. So right about here is where we're going to place the weapon generators. And we'll do that about a half a block back from that seam. And once again, we'll go 3 across. And this adds just some interesting gameplay, because after the bridge explodes, there's really nothing interesting until you get to the mine hill. You have some turns through the canyons here, but putting the weapon generators here just makes this a little bit more interesting in this section of the track, because now you got people trying to shoot you up. You got turns to help avoid them. But some of those tracks you can put booby traps like oil and stuff on the track, and so that kind of makes this canyon a little bit more interesting. And then we come around through the mines and around this way, and we come up to the volcano. And of course you have your choice. You can take the riskier road through the lava, or you can take the longer road around the track. And if you're not a bad driver, it's not too difficult to go through the lava. So you have to give the player some incentive to come around this longer path. And again, that's why we're going to put some weapon generators over here, because it gives them a reason to come this way. So if you have a pretty good driver, this might be some incentive to take the longer road. because you can pick up a weapon, and then if anybody does get ahead of you by going through the lava, you have something to take them out with and regain the lead. So this kind of balances that other shorter path. It's one of those gameplay balance issues that I picked up as a former indie game developer. Part of game design. All right, so there we go. We've got our weapon generators over there. And with that, I believe that's everything. We don't have any boost pads through here. We've got all the traps set up on either path through the temple. We have our turn and our little interesting area here. We've got the final turn over here with the trigger area and then the finish line. Okay, one more thing. Some of you have been asking for an aerial view of the track, so let me just give you that really quick. This is what the track would look like from the air. So if you were curious how this is laid out, there you go. And you can pause it there and look at that to your heart's content. It's kind of neat seeing the aerial view because it gives you a really good idea of the track layout. And if I were doing a strategy guide, I'd probably print that out and put it in my book. But with that, my Hawaiian Grand Prix toy box is done. But this series isn't, so be sure to come back next week as Lightning McQueen and I travel to Radiator Springs for the next course in the chase for the Toy Box Racing Cup. Until then, I want to thank you for watching and remind you to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next episode. Also, if you're enjoying this series so far, please hit the like button and leave a comment to let me know. Well, that's all for me today. See you next week.